Hey everybody, Invisiblekatana here doing my full season review for The Punisher. I did do an episode by episode review, so if you want to check it out or you just want to see like what I thought about one specific episode to get like all my details on that one scene or that one whole episode, you can definitely do that. I'll put a link in the description to the very first episode and you guys can just kind of go from there if you're interested in that. But I wanted to do this full season review for people that don't want to go through the episode by episode recap that I did and just talk about what I like for this season. Naturally, there will be spoilers. I'm going to be skipping over a lot of stuff because I did do every single episode, so I'm not going to spend a ton of time on this being like this specific thing and this and that. It's kind of just overall what I thought about the season, what I thought could have, been improved, and what I'm hoping for and looking forward to as far as, season 2. So to start from the beginning, I was definitely caught off guard by the fact that technically the Punisher was becoming Punisher all over again. Like, he killed a bunch of people in like the first couple minutes, and then it was like, here's the cool montage. He kills this dude here, this dude there. He does like the crazy super long shot where he's still in the U.S. and the other guys in Mexico, and he kills them, and it was like, oh, that's a cool montage. And then it ends with him burning the vest because he was getting rid of the Punisher, and he was like, all right, I'm done being the Punisher. And I was like, oh, this is like a second origin story, even though we know the origin from Daredevil. So that really caught me off guard. But I thought it was cool. I like the way they handled it. Across the board, I would say this is really great as far as the emotional turmoil that not just Frank went through, but like all the characters were going through. I think everything emotionally was acted well and written well. So all of that I absolutely loved, because I was like, man, this is insanely dark, not just, visually with, the couple of crazy sequences where Frank is murdering people, but also emotionally. That was like, I feel like the best part of the entire series was the emotional element was definitely well done. So this, as far as like all the Marvel Netflix shows, it's hard to say, but I might put it at either 3 or 4, because for me, it's still Daredevil seasons 1 and 2 as like my number 2. I think I like Daredevil season 2 more. I know a lot of people didn't like it as much because of the way it was kind of split, where it's like the first part was the Punisher part and then the second part was the Electro part, so I understand that. But for me, I really enjoyed that element. I like the way it all played out and how crazy things got with introducing Punisher, and of course how well done it was that, poof, now we have a Punisher show. But, it's like, for me, it's still Daredevil seasons 1 and 2, and then after that, I always like Jessica Jones because of just how intense things got, and this does that just 100 times more because, and it's more realistic because it's not based off of powers. It's just like really sad, depressing stuff. So that's another part of it where it's like, I don't know, because it's like they do that in Jessica Jones, but man, you can laugh at some parts of Jessica Jones. In this, I think I laughed like twice. There's some jokes in there for sure where I laugh, but it's like, man, it's just serious the whole way through. So it's like, it's an odd balance, but it's still done very well, and I was entertained the whole way through. But it's like, I don't mind being able to laugh sometimes. And Jessica Jones was definitely funny. So I don't know, it might still be 3 and then Punisher kind of slips in at 4. But I really loved it the whole way through. As far as how I think other people might perceive the season, I could totally understand if people didn't like this, because there is not as much action as I would have liked in it. Like, there's still a ton of action, but it's not like, everything that happened in this one season itself, I still don't think is cooler. Like, I don't think anything happened in this season that was cooler than what Frank did in Daredevil season 2. So this is a spoiler if you have not seen that. I would assume you have by this point. Like, you kind of have to see that. It's almost like watching, Daredevil or watching like Punisher season 0.5 right before you get to this full season. That's pretty much what it was. So the scene where he's in the prison, I still think was like the coolest thing we've seen him do, including everything that he did in this. Like, that, I think, was just like, here's an epic action sequence, and then in this, there were definitely cool action sequences, but it wasn't like, holy crap, he did something just, like, leagues beyond what you would expect to see, like, a normal human being even be capable of doing. Like, him shooting a bunch of people, you can do that. Like, you have a gun, if you're skilled with that gun, you can take people out, and there's some parts where they blend the two, where he's, taking people down and stuff, but I feel like nothing got to that height where it was like, holy crap, I want to rewatch that sequence, because that scene with him in the prison where he's just fighting all these people and it's just hand-to-hand stuff until he like gets the shiv, that was nuts. And it was beautifully done because of course they were all in like white suits, and then at the end he's just covered and drenched in blood. So definitely a great scene visually as well. But I feel like nothing in this season matched that. But I still loved everything that happened, and that's kind of why it's like, I could totally see this season not being what people thought it was going to be, as far as like, holy crap, let's see Punisher do some insane stuff, and he definitely does, but I feel like it's not really until the very end, outside of maybe like the very first fight when he kills the people at the end of the first episode, that I would have liked to have seen more of, because it was just like, oh man, he's just taking out some random criminals and he beat the F out of them with a sledgehammer, and he's dropping their bodies in cement as it's pouring. And stuff like that we get definitely in like the last two major battles that he goes through, but for the most part it's just like, it's a lot of hand-to-hand stuff. And like the flashback he had during like the crazy mission that went wrong, that was a good one too, where he's going through and it degrades from like he's got his guns to a knife to hand, and then it just is like caveman style. He gets a rock and he's just bashing someone's head in over and over when they've clearly been killed like a while ago. So there are a couple of moments in there for sure where it was like it's getting to that level of what he did during that prison scene, but nothing as cool to me. Like everything was definitely intense, but I don't think anything was at that point where it was like I want to rewatch that firefight from this episode or anything like that. They all look cool, but none of them really stood out as like the coolest thing ever. Like if I had to pick one sequence from this season that did stand out to me the most that I would probably rewatch, aside from the very first episode, I think that would actually be like my favorite one out of everything that happened. But if I wasn't going to choose that, I would probably have to go with the hideout shootout. Like once they actually found the hideout and Frank set up all those traps, that was a really cool one too, just to watch him have these traps and set up bombs and things like that. I really enjoyed that. As far as like an entire episode, that was really good for action. It was like paced out, but the whole episode together, the episode where Lewis killed himself at the end, like the hotel episode, that was probably the best one as far as action. So actually I'd probably pick that whole episode, just the pacing for that I thought was perfect, because that was the action episode of the whole season, where it was just, like story-wise it was good too, because people were finding out secrets and stuff, and then we have like this weird story as it jumps back and forth through time. And that whole episode I would probably say is my favorite one out of the season, because I thought the pacing was just perfect story-wise and action-wise. And it's like I'm, as Frank Castle, he's, this is right after everyone finds out he's alive, so he's like in the middle of this crazy situation of, I need to stop Lewis, but I also need to survive. And he's in a hotel full of enemies. Like everyone on both sides is his enemy. Lewis is his enemy, Anvil is his enemy, the police are his enemy. He has no allies outside of Karen. And that was it the whole way through. So he has to survive, but he also has to help Karen. She's freaking out because Lewis has lost it, and he's got the the dead man switch with the bomb. So that whole episode I would say is probably my favorite out of everything. And that, like I said, just the pacing in general was just top to bottom, I thought, perfect for what they were. Like if you want Punisher, that's kind of it. Like it was just as dark as it needed to be, but the action was insane too, where Frank is trying to do right in like 100 different ways at once, and then there's secrets revealed here. He finds out about Russo. Dinah finds out about Russo as well, or Medina, whichever name you prefer. And so it's just like revelations were being thrown out there where they're finding out the truth about characters. Just the story, the way it was kind of going back and forth through time with what characters were finding out and why they ended up in the hotel was really well done. So that episode I would say was probably my favorite, and that, just like that's as a whole, I just thought the pacing was perfect for that episode. But, like I said, as far as like one action sequence, it would have to be, my number one was probably the end of the very first episode. Just because it was like, okay, we get to see Punisher doing his thing, and it's not him in a crazy firefight. It's him just some hand-to-hand stuff, and people were trying to take him down. There was, of course, some gunplay in that action sequence, but it was just him breaking bones and tossing bodies into cement. And it was just like, yeah, that was a pretty nuts, sequence. And they all were. Like, he was just killing people left and right outside of the scene when he was on the army base and he had to not kill people. I love that for the tension as well, because he had to find a different way to go through it. So that I would say was a pretty fun scene to watch as well, because he wasn't trying to kill a bunch of military people. So I love that. But all in all, I thought it was a really fun season. Love the action. Think the drama was done absolutely perfectly, and that's why I think this is such a great season. Like that, I feel, is the heart of what it is. It's like they did the emotions right, because on the surface you do see Frank Castle and it's like, oh, it's the dude who kills people. It's kind of like the Hulk. Like on the surface it's the Hulk. He beats everybody up. But if you do like the drama right for that, you can have a great Hulk story where it's not just the Hulk, but also Bruce Banner. The turmoil that goes on with that, back and forth, that sort of Jekyll and Hyde mentality there. You can do a great story with that. And Frank Castle is kind of that story, except he's always the Hulk. He just kind of, sometimes he's not killing somebody, and then most times he is. That's pretty much how it goes for Frank Castle. So I think they did it perfectly. I love this season. I think all the side characters are actually cool. I really like Micro. I'm not, super familiar with the Punisher comics, so I didn't really know anything about him before the show. But I loved him as a character. He was pretty cool, and his relationship with Frank, how they kind of hated each other in the beginning, and just how things kind of built up. And it was like, Micro is pretty much the reason Frank was involved again, because he was already living the, pseudo good life, trying to just hide himself away. And then Micro is the one that got in contact with him, and so Frank was kind of pissed at him in the beginning, and then it's like, all right, well, we both need answers to get what we need in life, either revenge or my family. And then over time, they kind of actually became friends, and I thought that was pretty cool. So I like the way the side characters kind of, either connected with Frank or just how they were as characters in general. I thought it was pretty well done. Like I said, the emotional turmoil that pretty much every single character went through in one fashion or another was definitely well done. Like, it even went down to, like, the kids, like Micro's kids had issues that they had to deal with left and right about either being kidnapped or just the fact that, they don't have their dad anymore. The scene with Frank and Micro's son where he puts the knife up to him and he's trying to freak him out, and the kid is like, cut me. I was like, what in the world? Like, that is not what you would expect, and neither did Frank. He was like, whoa, what the F is this kid saying? It's like every single person had some insane emotional moment, and it was incredibly well done. So enjoyed the season. Like I said, if you guys want to go through and just get like my detailed reviews, you can definitely check out my episode reviews. Like I said, I have a link to my episode 1 review, so you can check that out. I did review all the other Marvel Netflix shows, so if you want to check those out, you certainly can as well. I'll put a link to, episode 1 of each one, if I remember, because I kind of suck putting stuff in the description. But if I remember, I will put a link to every episode 1. I reviewed every single season, including Iron Fist. If you didn't watch it, you can check out my reviews and see how much I hated it. I was just like riding the line. It was always, oh, there's a cool fight, and that makes that next fight really dumb because they just kept doing a lot of stupid things in there. But either way, you can check out my reviews for all the other shows, and I definitely want to know what you guys thought about this season. If you're a big Punisher fan, would love to know how you guys felt about this take on the Punisher, how it was, the season was acted, Frank, side characters as well, how they were represented as well as acted, and kind of what you guys are looking forward to for season 2. For me, I mentioned this in my season finale review, I would love to see Kingpin be the main villain for Punisher, because it just works. Like, they already had that interaction in Daredevil season 2. I think it will work perfectly, but I don't think that'll happen because it'll be years from now before we get, Punisher season 2, and it's Kingpin, so odds are he'll have some relevance in Daredevil season 3 because he was already absent. Well, technically, he still wasn't absent in Daredevil season 2. He was just in prison. So now it's been, we had the Defenders go on, and now we've had Punisher. So the time just keeps passing, more and more. I don't think they're going to leave Kingpin out of season 3 of Daredevil. So, and he could still be involved in season 2 of Punisher without a doubt. But I just think that would be great if, like, and they aren't going to kill him. That would be insane to kill off Kingpin. So I know that's not going to happen in Daredevil. So he could go straight from Daredevil season 3 to, Punisher season 2, and it would work perfectly. So they could still end up doing it, and that's just who I would like to see because they already had that interaction. So it just makes sense to keep that going and be like, oh, we had our little deal in prison, but now we're both out of prison, and I'm going to kill you because you're the bad guy. So I feel like that could totally work. They could also bring in literally anyone from, the Marvel Universe because Punisher's always fighting somebody, whether they're hero or villain. I mentioned Kraven. I don't think that would ever happen because, they got, the Spider-Man movie, so I don't think they'd actually do that. But I don't know why that popped in my head, but I would love to see that, like Kraven versus Punisher. If done right, that would just be great. So no matter what, I'm looking forward to season 2. Of course, Russo is still going to be there, and whatever character he is within the comics I'm not familiar with, but he'll definitely be there, whether he remembers or not. They might do the Spider-Man 3 Harry thing where he, like, bonked his head super hard, then he was a good guy for a minute, and it was like, oh, now I remember again. So I don't know, maybe they'll do that in season 2, but either way, I'm looking forward to where we're headed for this. I do hope that we have a scene that does really stick out in my mind, because like I said, as far as the action goes, I thought it was well done, but nothing caught my attention like that scene of Frank when he fought those guys in Daredevil season 2, when he was in the prison. It was just like, man, that was a cool scene. And that wasn't him in Daredevil. That was just Frank Castle surviving because he's badass like that. And he killed all those people. You're just going in the line, and it was just an insane sequence. And it's like, that was freaking awesome. That's one of my favorite scenes from that whole season. That was just like, where it's like, oh, the epic hallway scene. That was his hallway scene, and they kind of had it in Daredevil, but he never really had that moment here outside of what I would consider like the whole episode of that hotel thing, which like I said, I that episode, I legitimately thought the pacing and story and action was just perfect with how chaotic it all was and how it just flowed like so perfectly together. So really enjoyed this season. Looking forward to season 2. Like I said, would love to know what you guys thought about this season, this version of the Punisher. You know, how they did the side characters, how they handled the emotion and all that stuff, and definitely what you guys want to see and think we'll see. Like, if you think they will bring Kingpin over, we'd love to know your reasoning why, and just who you want to see in general for season 2. So please comment below, let me know, and of course, thanks for watching.